Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Reacts where today we've got 3 tracks from an act named Justin Pachen. The first of these titled Born in 60's, and if we switch over to here, we've got ourselves the tracks here on Spotify from what I presume is, at least with this track, to be the Mystic Birth album. We're going to listen through 3 tracks from start till finish and we're going to hear what we think. Let's do it. Born in 60's. I like the moodiness of the guitars.
Born in 60's, live in 60's. Born in 60's.
Great vocal fry.
60s, we went through the excitement of 60s. We went through the excitement of 60s. Born in 60s, we're alive in 60s.
Very cool response with the guitars.
Records, cassettes, CDs, pen drives, backing, vinyl, records, radio, recorders, TVs, internet, back in the farm radio.
So I've kind of got a hand on the drums from an audience perspective.
Fired, boil, steam, oil, backing, fired, grills, caustics, electronics, programming, back in ambient acoustic. Days to bed. It took 60s to know those days to bed. Sun heat, forces, nuclear, magnetic, backing, solar, power, mission moon, mission space, mission Mars, mission sun, back in mission South Pole. Born in 60s.
Very used to the unison of the guitars.
60s. Born in 60s, celebrating 60s, even we still low at 69, even we still low, 69.
I like how it fades down to the ether. That's cool. switching from a triplet tempo to a 16th triplet. Nice. That was actually a really interesting sort of change of groove on the drums there at the end. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2. Yeah, that was really interesting. We went from like a triplet feel throughout the majority of it to a different sort of phrasing there. Because that was born in 60's, the first track from Justin Pachen. Hopefully I'm not mispronouncing that. Off of the Mystic Birth album released, I think. This track released in November 1, 2024. So in each of these sort of post-song sections, I'm going to provide an overall sort of analysis, song review, everything from lyrics and vocals all the way through to studio production. And then at the end, I'm going to have like an overall analysis of the 3 tracks, as well as any applicable constructive critique. And then finally, my general thoughts from a listener's perspective. But first of all, what do we think this track is about? I think that this track is about someone looking back on the 60's when they were born and considering that after being on the earth for 60 years, they've realized that that was the best time to be alive. They're discussing a lot of things that occurred back then, such as the different media formats, the records, the space stuff as well, the space landing that occurred in 69, talking about like power and how things used to be back then. And I think that that's a kind of nostalgia that people that are born in that period will also be able to appreciate. You know, I think people typically do look back at the glory days of how things used to be. And there was some genuinely cool things that were occurring back then as well, especially with a lot of the kind of nihilism and apathy it is within the mid-2020s at this point, because of how things are going and whichever side of the aisle you're on. Ultimately, I feel like the vocal performance from Justin was really solid here. We're very comfortable in a hint-chest voice. We have a distinctive range. We have a bit of charisma with the kind of laughing, the ha-ha part we had later on. And we know not only how to be a main lead and work alongside the guitar, bass, drum, and organ elements, but we also know how to kind of allow the guitarists to have their own space and room to breathe as an alternate lead. So effectively, it's just a really solid first impression to their work there, and I'm very happy with what I've heard so far. They're very comfortable on the mic. They express themselves neatly in a way that is suitable for the blues and rock genre. And so we hit the notes cleanly with a bit of vocal fry as well, which is kind of cool. Adds a bit of edge to it. The track at 4 minutes 44 is nicely niched out with a variety of different verse and chorus and sort of solo sections there. There are seamless transfers between parts with an instrumental outro, and I just like the way that things are put together here. Things seem nice and cohesive. There's a sense of chemistry between the various elements and vocals through to the instruments, and it's an overall quite a tight instrumental performance. A few of the highlights for me personally were the guitar parts. I do dig especially the call and response lead guitars that we had working with those pentatonics, the bluesy scales, unison bends, etc. It was nice to have that have its own sort of personality and time to shine within the mix. I think the bass guitars worked right neatly in the lower end of the frequency spectrum there. They weren't too overbearing, simply enough to provide a stable ground floor for the elements that were surrounding it. I feel like the drums were really well played as well. I like the mixture of different hi-hat and ride parts there and how they interchange between the sides of the stereo field with those cymbal choices. We had a steady triplet flow and 4/4 the vast majority of it, although I do kind of like how we worked in like 16ths with the kind of 3/6/8 feel near the end of it. It was kind of cool to change up the groove and flow of the track there. It was quite a steady pace forward. It almost insinuates near the end that we're going in a different direction there, as we talk about still being able to love at 69. So ultimately, yeah, great effort with the track instrumentally there. The organ is a nice sort of loyal, authentic layer instrumentally, texturally from that. You know, that era of music there, the vibrato tremolo on that is neat, and it's a nice contrast to a lot of the more sort of straightforward cuts, even with legato technique from the guitars and the push of the drums. And it's just nice also to have an acoustic drum kit there for a bit of a raw kind of tone from the percussion there. Ultimately, thematically, we're working firmly within the bluesy kind of era of guitar playing. So you have the scales, the blues, minor pentatonics, etc. You have chord changes and bass lines and moments of kind of tension there with adjustments of the chord progressions and stuff like that, which I appreciate, especially over a longer form factor track. So 2 to 4 minutes. It's just outside of that sweet spot there where you do need to have variety, either instrumentally or vocally or structurally, to be able to sort of keep things intriguing, but we handle that in spades there. The mood of the different leads suits the harmonies backing it. There's no moments of confusion or disillusionment. And so effectively, you've just got the studio production, recording, mixing, and mastering, which I feel is also really well handled. It's got this kind of dry sound to it, which is interesting just because there's like reverb tails and delays and echoes on certain parts there. The drums have a great presence and are punchy within the mix, and the vocals are too there. We're nice and clean and we shimmer in the ether. The organs, guitars, bass, and drums have room to breathe within the stereo field, the different right sides of the headphones and speakers, and there's no weird resonances within the frequency spectrum. It's nice and loud, bit of pumping, bass compression, limiting is handled. Just, yeah, a great first impression to Justin's work. Because we have Borrowed Dreams, track number 2. Some de-eyed guitars here. Ah, nice, just dynamic range here with the extra guitars.
In the dark of the night we gather, chasing our dreams. With every hope we grow stronger, near the borrowed streets. Played our hearts out in those college crowded halls. Every clap and every cheers reminds me of my mother. Those struggles we had as storms should fly. From the dark deserted room, our dream took the stage of slide.
I do take how we go out with the sides with those guitars though. That's a nice adjustment from the chorus.
Even our parents breed, don't venture into ads. But we were in the spirit of friendship and fame. From every different bands, we found our place. In our melodies, our lives embrace. With a child we call away our boring souls. And at a young age, for the stars shining in light.
I'm just not sure if I'm getting all the words through clearly, you know? Oh, there's claps in the background, nice. So that was Borrowed Dreams, track number 2 for today. This one was a little bit more tricky for me to sort of really feel out. I'm not quite sure what the track was about. They talk about melodies at some point and they talk about their families. So I'm kind of wondering if it's maybe a kind of commiseration between different people in their lives and kind of coming together to celebrate a shared melody or a shared dream or something like that. Maybe they're trying to work together with the people that they discuss things with to get involved. I think I just need another time listening through the track to sort of really understand what the track's about. I just wasn't entirely sure on a first listen basis, but aside from not knowing what the song is about, I think that the vocals were, we hit the notes really cleanly, we added interesting texture to our voice. I think it could potentially just be an enunciation thing, but with some of the words, but aside from that, it's fine. We had a nice little ba 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 ba. We get like a melody in that outro section that was kind of neat there, and it was nice to have additional layers come in and harmonize on top there. So we understand our fundamentals of using intervals to be able to sort of build tracks, which is really good. I kind of dig that. I think that it's nice to sort of explore a narrative for the first part of the track, and then once you've told your story, if you wanted to go longer, you do need to sort of switch it up and maybe turn it into more of a melody as opposed to a storytelling device. So yeah, even though I didn't necessarily know what the track's about, I still liked the way that the vocals worked with the instrumental backing. I think structurally, this track being a bit shorter than the previous one, there was good use of real estate there. There are a mixture of different chord progressions with a tight instrumental performance overall. That was a mixture of guitars, bass, drums, and piano there. I could hear some arpeggios of those keys on the right side where we danced through those triads. And I think it was just kind of cool to have those DI'd acoustics at the start, then go into that kind of moody, grungy, distorted or overdriven guitar. It was just an interesting kind of vibe shift, which illustrated a sense of darkness, I think, in comparison to what was going on to like those lighter, fluffier elements within the verse parts. I think the driving drum beat that you have throughout the piece there elicits a sense of pace in a way where it's nice and tight alongside those main sort of like eighth note elements from the keys and the guitar parts. And I think effectively there's a nice sort of rhythmic cohesion between the elements with tempo well kept. And the bass is a bit more active in this one, especially when you've got those distorted guitars. You notice that it's dancing around the fretboard a little bit and exploring some of the relevant scales and modes appropriate. And I like that because it's just nice to hear when you've got more of a consistent rhythm guitar line, the bass having room to breathe. So when you combine those different elements there, with that kind of mid-late section there, with the kicks there, with the ba 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 ba, just providing a nice sense of dynamic range to the song, you have a piece there where thematically, you're just kind of feeling like you've had a nice sort of isolated concept there, short and sweet. And I think it's major key oriented there, so I think that the idea overall is a kind of gentle hope for the future, even though, again, those darker sounding guitar parts elicit a sense of maybe stress or tension in there. I think ultimately the track is, especially when people kind of clap together as an additional percussive layer at the end, we're trying to sort of more suggest that we're trying to sort of celebrate the way that we work together on those things. Or alternatively, it could be melancholic and we're just kind of vibing along to it regardless. I'm not quite sure. Either way, there is a journey you go on with this piece. And yeah, I think that the key signature scale choices there, especially with the kind of rock ballad-esque kind of format, kind of meatloafish kind of suit neatly. Studio recording, mixing, and mastering. Similar comments to the other part there. I wasn't initially totally convinced with what we did with the distorted, with the DI, should I say, guitar parts at the start there. But I think it was meant to be a deliberate contrast to those distorted guitars you have a bit later on there. So it's totally fine. I just was wondering if they sounded a little bit thin, but ultimately they were presented quite well there. There were no sort of harsh textures, tones, or elements within the track itself. Things seemed quite well leveled. There was dynamic range to it, you know, nice and loud pumping, like very similar comments to the previous track there. It's good stuff. And the vocals, even though I wasn't sure about all the words, they still came through clearly in the mix, and the harmonies you had later on were nicely spaced throughout the stereo field and frequency spectrum. We have Slow Life, track number 3. Oh, nice turn there with the major.
Success and happiness that we all know possession. Life is not for possession but for relationships. Make and the peace, living
really pleasant when those strings come in. It's interesting to have like string arpeggios and then pads. So that was Slow Life, track number 3 from Justin Pachen, off of, again, what I presume to be the Mystic Birth album. I could be wrong. I'm just seeing the similar art across the tracks. So I think this track is more saying that in order to find happiness, we need to sort of appreciate the little things and try not to rush things, you know, not try to rush things too much. And I think that that's kind of the main message of it, and I kind of dig that. I think that it's like a message for anyone. You know, we're in constant speed and pace, and it's good just to be able to take a break and appreciate the simple things. So it's cool. No complaints about the subject matter on my part. I think there'll be an audience for this too, as per the previous 2 tracks. Well, maybe definitely the first one. So I'm still not sure about Borrowed Dreams, but I think there'll be like an audience for this track. You know, like I mean, I'm not so sure about Borrowed Dreams, but like Born in 60's for sure. And the vocal performance, again, I didn't get all the words through clearly, but I got through more words this time. So the enunciation, I think, was a little bit better. There were just a mixture of really effective melodies and harmonies from Justin here that worked neatly over top of the varying sort of guitar, string, pad, bass, and drum elements. It was very pleasant to listen to. Ultimately, we had a kind, caring, soothing tone to our voice in many respects, where we tried to be a bit more gentle, I think, to suit the subject matter, and that expression seemed appropriate and was implemented quite well. I think we also had keys, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong. I mean, like, so vocally, again, competent. We decorated it neatly, and it was a longer track of 4 minutes 51, but I don't think we overstayed our welcome. It was just an easy listen, I suppose. I also dig the fact that there was just an extended slide guitar solo with heavy reverb in the middle of the piece there. It's kind of nice to have a palate cleanser from Justin's vocals there, something different to pay attention to at that halfway point, just to get you ready to hear another 2 minutes of their sort of like discussion. And I think that you need to have that in a longer form track just to add further sort of variety to the piece. And you have like different lead guitars. It's not just the slide part. There's also some arpeggiating, almost sort of like neoclassical-ish at times, lead guitar with some light distortion on the left side that does pay attention to what the strings are doing in those arpeggiated sections going into those choruses. And they kind of mirror each other in a way which adds an interesting textural symmetry, whilst also building the track up in a way which ironically or in juxtaposition seems actually quite balanced. The drums play a wide variety of different sort of patterns and grooves. There are some interesting sort of snare and tom fills there. And ultimately, they perform a slower triplet feel, I think. Yeah, ultimately it is. We've got a nice sort of crackle or crack to the snare as well there. That's nice and present within the mix. And ultimately, I just think it's a tight performance on the kit there that is nice and sort of like reliable for the vocals, guitar strings, etc. to be able to like land on regardless of whichever texture or tone you're hearing, whether it is the strummed acoustics or, for example, the synth pad at the end of the piece there, the way they kind of like filter out. To be fair, they don't have drums in that part if I'm not mistaken there, but it's just like worth noting there that it's also good that the drums know when not to be there. Bass underneath was quite well balanced within everything else, respectful of the root notes and never overstayed its welcome, and sort of like tightly played with the drums, and ultimately just have a well fleshed out track which expands throughout the frequency spectrum from a compositional perspective, with the instrumental layering nice and sort of reliable, but also quite delicate and sort of like pleasant to listen to there. You know, there wasn't the kind of ambiguity as with Borrowed Dreams here going backwards and forwards. It was relatively almost hypnotic in its beauty for a lot of it. So ultimately, you just have a really pleasant song that thematically works within the major key, even though it starts with a minor in the chorus there, which I think is an interesting thing to do. Starting with a minor chord in a chorus insinuates a sense of sort of sadness there, or like negativity there, but then what it does is it resolves to the major there, letting you know that even though there's a slight moment of concern or maybe agitation, it will resolve itself and be better. And so that kind of moodiness there also just makes the track sound a little bit more sort of mature there, which I appreciate. And there's a nice sort of fluffiness to the strings as well, even though they're kind of perky at the same time. That just elevates, as I mentioned, in those chorus sections to not make them seem too down. So instrumentally, a bit more sort of busy than previous tracks, but considering the slightly longer form factor, that's totally fine. And ultimately, you just have the studio recording, mixing, and mastering, which as per prior there, the vocals, strings, pads, guitars, bass, and drums are well leveled within the frequency spectrum and stereo field. No word resonant frequencies there. Nice use of reverb and delay tails on things there. And it's just great to have trade-offs of those leads without things being too squeezed. There's a sufficient amount of headroom here for the genre. It does kind of remind me of recordings from back in the day, which I appreciate. And yeah, nice and loud bit of pumping, bass compression, limited handled vocals aren't overproduced. And I'm going to talk about these tracks more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of these 3 tracks from an acts named Justin Pachen titled Born in 60's, Borrowed Dreams, and Slow Life. In this section, we're going to provide an overall song analysis for these 3 tracks, as well as any applicable constructive critique, and then finally, my general thoughts from a listener's perspective. But first of all, what do we think these tracks are about? I should note just while I say this that these are about different topics. So Slow Life being more about taking your time and appreciating the little things. Borrowed Dreams, I think, about coming together and trying to sort of like fulfill things together, achieve your dreams, not in isolation, but as a team there with the clapping together, bring people together. And Born in 60's, I think, is more about just sort of like celebrating a sense of nostalgia for how things used to be and kind of wanting to sort of have things back when they used to be there, knowing that it took a while to appreciate what you had, but nonetheless being able to appreciate it in the first place. And these are topics that are clearly very, important to Justin, because he sings them in a way where he genuinely cares about them. I didn't necessarily get all the words through clearly, if I'm honest. There was some occasions where we could have potentially have enunciated a little bit better, but for the most part I got the words through clearly. It was especially helped with the lyrics within Born in 60's. And so when I got the words clearly, or I understood them, I understood the context and why they were there, and they typically fit in a way that was very sort of pleasant to listen to. There were no harsh confrontational moments within this track, even though there is a kind of a brittle kind of like vocal fry to a lot of what Justin is doing. It's not unpleasant to listen to. We harmonize neatly with surrounding elements, create compelling, varied vocal melodies and harmonies, can even be melodic, like in the last part of Borrowed Dreams, that middle eight going into that final sort of outro section. And we carry ourselves well as a main lead storyteller within the piece there in a way that is, again, palatable and is just a great team player, because outside of the vocals and the storytelling kind of matching and being sort of like very effective, you've simply got the rest of the tracks, which when they're between 3 and 5 minutes, you really do need to make sure that you've got enough composition or performance variation in order to be able to have these kind of things kind of carry over. And I think that we had that here. We had a mixture of different sort of bluesy, kind of folkish, kind of almost balladesque kind of inferences, as well as some sort of overdriven kind of grungy parts, like in Borrowed Dreams. There was some mixture of some really sort of interesting DI. You had different styles that we typically oscillated between and handled neatly in a way where they were isolated concepts effective, but they still, because of Justin's voice, sounded like they matched. And so you bring these things together and it's just very sort of like sweet sounding. It's regardless of what you're listening to, the guitars, whether they're distorted, like with some of the lead tones that we had and Born in the 60s with the bluesy parts, the unison bends, the slides, hammer-ons, and legato, etc. With that kind of scale choice there, that was suitable for the genre there. But you also had a mixture of strummed, sort of like clean, sort of DI'd elements that were nice and bright and shimmered and had nice sort of chord progressions and harmonies or picked parts that they emulated, as well as some sort of slide guitar parts and slow leaf there, which had a sort of country feel and worked, I think, well alongside the blues leanings of Born in 60s. You just had a lot of different sort of like variations, interpretations, the way the guitar was put forward, and I feel like that's just an important thing to do, especially when you are trying to go between genres, is you need to make those textures kind of still sound somewhat connected. So I think part of that was the tones and textures used, as well as just a general proficiency in total from Justin on their playing here. I feel like the bass parts that we had were either working with the root notes or they were exploring a little bit in Borrowed Dreams, which was great. The drum parts had a variety of different sort of like chord note and sort of like more sort of eighth note literal parts with a mixture of different hi-hat and 16 components, some kick and crash sort of like focuses. But we measured our tempos neatly. We were consistent across the board in terms of the speed of things and kept a great steady pace for the rest of the elements. And then we also had some fills on each transfers and knew when to not be there, such as the end of Slow Life with the pads and stuff. The keys that we had there were very sort of like almost sort of like organ oriented, such as in Born in 60's, which had a nice sort of tremolo and warble to it, which suited the mood of the bluesy stealings. We then also had like arpeggiated components, such as in Borrowed Dreams there. And the pads at the end of Slow Life there were just a nice sort of like filler, a nice sort of mid-range kind of glow to the end of it, just to sort of sound a bit sweeter, especially with the other type of strings we had going on. So the chorus section of Slow Life being nice and perky, more melodic in a way that incentivized the lead guitar to come in on the other side with a bit of spice there to emulate that as well, or to call and respond to it. Structurally, I mean, like the instrumental parts were really effective, but structurally you just had a mixture of verse and chorus and solo elements there, some instrumental outros and intros, but ultimately, like lots of call and response there and interaction between the elements there. We had a middle eight where it was more sort of like kick oriented with the vocals, and we built up from that. We understand how to put different chord progressions together in tracks and to not take the listener's attention for granted. That never happens. Thematically, usually more sort of like related to the style, such as blues, or we're using minors when actually it's a major resolution there, which works effectively. And ultimately, it's just great use of different textures, such as in Borrowed Dreams, where we go between the clean and distorted guitars to illustrate different vibes or feels. And you just feel like you've gotten the kind of idea of who Justin is as a musician through listening to these 3 tracks alone. But the chord progressions, lead solos, bass lines, etc. typically work well with what the vocals and lyrics are trying to sort of communicate. And so then you effectively just have the studio recording, the mixing and mastering, which effectively overall was quite well done. I'm really happy with what I heard in terms of the clarity of the vocals, the different vocal takes with the melodies or the harmonies, the guitars, bass, drums, strings, pads, keys, organs, etc. Those are well pressed out within the stereo field, left and right sides of the cans and headphones, speakers, as well as nowhere resonant frequencies within the frequency spectrum there. And things were well leveled. There were no issues with sort of like dynamic range. Things weren't too squeezed. Bit of pumping, bus compression, limiting is handled. And ultimately, you could just tell people were playing their instruments. It was quite a tight sort of experience overall. I think there was a little bit of like kind of like extra effects work on the vocals within Borrowed Dreams there. Like we kind of had a bit of sort of stepping there with some of those melodies, but I think it was just because we really wanted to hit the notes. But ultimately overall, just a really sort of positive experience with this music. In terms of applicable constructive critique, I think if there was just anything, it's just simply making sure that all the words come through clearly, but then like that's totally fine. Like that's something we can look at for future parts there. I still got the words through that I think I needed to. And studio recording, and from a general final listener's perspective, I don't really think there's much else we would need to improve with. We've just got great isolated concepts. It's just, I think, about Justin continuing to explore themselves as a musician, find other things they want to talk about, and eventually establishing a sense of who they are through more tracks and like a wider concept. But I wish everyone involved the best of luck in future, because thank you for watching my review of these tracks from an ex named Justin Pachen, titled Born in 60's, Borrowed Dreams and Slow Life. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via their various social medias and a Spotify page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as you need to help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next SB Reacts. Spiderhands out.